I have a question about press. Have you encountered any that are more mainstream, like not queer specific press? Have they been able to ask you questions that aren't horribly offensive, or like do they understand the show? Are they able to talk to you about it with actual like intelligent questions, or have they offended you in any way? Like both of you.
I mean, I can speak sort of about the experience that I've had sort of like so far with regards to my anthology, which is very different than sort of a lot of the other work that I do or that Kestrel does. In that it does sort of have a much broader appeal in that way, or not even broader appeal, but it's more digestible to maybe folks who have never thought about these issues before. And not to say that it's not phenomenally queer when you will all get to read it in a year, but that it has like the foreword is written by Judy Shepard and it's endorsed by P-Flag National, and so there's sort of like these cultural signifiers that make it that on first look maybe a little safer to some folks, which is exciting because I feel like it means that like parents who are struggling with their kids coming out are going to read it, but then you get into it and it's very queer, and so like queer youth who have been kicked out are going to identify there, and so I think press with that have been really excited because it's an issue that like they know is happening on some level, though often they're really surprised at the immensity of the problem of queer youth homelessness, but they've been really respectful and really interested in covering it, particularly I think sort of some initial contact with mainstream publications that appeal to teenagers and sort of recognizing that that's something that kids are dealing with. But in mainstream press with your show too.
Yeah, I haven't really run into any issues with it, I don't think. I mean, if anything, like, part of that's probably partially, I mean, I'd say because I'm so willing to, like, play the freak and not let people be uncomfortable with that and just be like, no, I'm different than you, and that's fine, and we have things in common, but I don't like to censor myself for the press because I think like they can smell fear, and no, but I
can smell fear.
They can. It's true. No, but like to have a very clear idea of what I want to say, and I don't think I've ever like. When you're trans, you deal with offensive questions walking down the street, and so I'm not sure if it's just that I'm kind of anesthetized to it at this point, but I don't think I've had any coverage that I've seen it and been like, where did they get that from? Like,
I mean, you had some that used female pronouns, which was more fascinating than anything else. Like, they'd seen the show, and it's like, really? Okay.
Yeah, and, there's, I think part of it's because there are a lot of different levels that people enter into my piece on, of like, to someone coming into it, to the reviewer who doesn't have any background at all with gender or anything, come in and they see a piece about a woman transitioning to be a man, and they miss a lot of the nuance, but that's where they are with it. And then you see, another thing where like some queer publication described my show as a carousing caper for the queer theory set, and it's a completely different take on it then, but
we're also really spoiled and we live in New York City, and I think that changes things a lot too, that like the press that we interface with, especially in terms of like XYT and it is so used to, or at least has like a base familiarity with talking about queer things and queer performance, and this isn't the work that we're doing is new and exciting, but that it's not necessarily identities or thoughts that they've never heard of before or something like that, like,
or it's not that far beyond the pale.
Exactly.
Like there's still some precedence there. I think it might be a little bit different than North Carolina.
I don't know. I wondered because I did hear it was something about the Fringe Festival. It was a radio piece or a podcast, and they were sort of interviewing a bunch of different shows, and you were on there for a little while. And I listened to it, and I remembered. Like you were very articulate and clear about what you were doing, but the interviewer seemed to have like no concept and no interest. And I was wondering if it was something you encountered a lot, like someone who didn't really want to ask you anything.
That one was weird. I remember the one you're talking about there. maybe it's just I blot the stuff that's less than ideal, you know, from
That
my
was
memory.
like the one really weird one.
The
And
one
I mean, the
heard.
the funny thing with that was a radio show being done by it's an indie theater site.